Andy, welcome to the Racer's Edge.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Tim.
We've had 18 months in isolation now. Have you guys come out of that okay?
We have. I mean, Neil, the drummer, he's had COVID twice. He had COVID, I think, the first month whenever there was lockdown. Both his kids got it. And then he's been double vaccinated and he came back from Bloodstock and he got it again. So he's currently, in his own words, on the sofa in his pajamas. Yeah. So, he's got it as well. Myself and Michael have been very fortunate, as have her families. But yeah, it's Neil was the one that suffered the most.
Wow, yeah. Twice is quite something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did you do anything productive with those 18 months in lockdown?
We did actually. Yeah, it was quite difficult to get a routine to start with because the thing about therapy is we live all over the place. We were very jealous of bands that all live in the same town or the same county, and even the same country at times. I mean, Michael lives in Northern Ireland. I live in Cambridgeshire, and Neil lives in Derbyshire. So, with the power of Zoom and all our computers, we've got about 26 songs, which we'd kind of written in all this time since March 2020. And we managed to, whenever the first lockdown was lifted, we got a couple of rehearsals in the Midlands. And then we got a couple of more rehearsals before Bloodstock. And we tried a lot of the new material. So I think that the idea is we have about 26 songs. I think we're going to narrow it down to about 14 and record those for the album in October. But yeah, it took a while to get our heads around it because we're the kind of people that we like being in a room, looking at each other and feeling the speakers push the air and stuff. So yeah, but we were productive enough, yeah.
Brilliant. So we should have been having this chat at Bloodstock, but obviously there was timing changes on the day and things like that. So looking back to that and even Steelhouse a few weeks beforehand, how does it feel being back on stage?
Well, the Steelhouse one broke the duck a little bit because everyone was a bit nervous. We didn't know how it was going to go. Not reaction-wise. We knew the crowd would be great. But I think this is the longest in therapy's history that we've ever been without a gig. Our very last concert was October the 6th, 2019, the London Forum. And we haven't played a show since then. And as I say, we've had probably 4 rehearsals. And it's not the same, having a rehearsal in a sterile room with with borrowed equipment or sometimes your own equipment is nowhere near the same as doing it in front of a few thousand people.
Yeah.
And I think certainly with Steelhouse, I forgot how much energy we put into the shows because whenever we're rehearsing, we kind of stand there, you know what I mean? And we kind of do it at our own pace. But when the adrenaline kicks in with a live audience, I think about 4 songs into Steelhouse, I thought, I've maybe gone for this a bit too hard for the first songs here, but it was great. And then that kind of helped us with Bloodstock. And Bloodstock, I think we had a 45-minute set as well. It was Steelhouse was like 75 minutes or something, and that was kind of just straight on. The good thing about Bloodstock as well was that you only had the dressing room an hour before the show, and there was no time to kind of hang about and get nervous and overthink it.
Yeah.
So we knew what the set was. We rehearsed it within an inch of its life, and we just had to go out and play. So I mean, I'm hoping that this will have a cumulative effect. The next gig we do will be even better than Bloodstock, etc. But yeah, the Steelhouse one was weird. I think walking to the stage was very surreal because they had the dressing rooms were about right behind the stage at Steelhouse, and the tour manager rapped on the door and went, "Okay, you're on now." And it was like, right, okay. And it was almost like the thrill of it was mixed with almost like the sheer fear of the condemned man. It was a bizarre thing. Considering this is in our blood playing live, but it was a good thing. We went with it. We all felt, none of us gibbered. I mean, we always talk about one of us choking on stage if anything goes wrong, but yeah, we all went with it.
Brilliant. So there's quite a few COVID cases coming out of Bloodstock. Neil and myself included. So have you approached the festival season any differently this year because of the pandemic?
Yeah, well, I do try and cut down, we had this discussion with our road crew, with our tour manager and with our actual management, and we try and cut down the amount of interaction with traveling, so if we can, we will all get together and travel up together. We all take tests on a regular basis. Our tour manager's got a sack of lateral flow test, which he makes us take, and which we're glad to take. So we're all very good at doing that. It just means that things like getting from A to B, we have to do it with a military-like precision. There's no room for kind of one of us arriving after going to like a garden festival and like that. This is all basically, we have to just turn up at the place and be there on time. Yeah. And that's us too, because that's kind of the way we are as people. We're very organized and very self-willed.
Yeah. So looking at the two festivals that you've played this year, the Steelhouse and Bloodstock, they're two very different fan demographics, if you like. So does setlist planning alter depending on the target audience of gigs like that?
Well, it doesn't really, because we don't really have, something like Steelhouse, which is a great venue and a great festival, is a bit like, say, maybe Rambling Man or something. It tends to be a lot more traditional. And, people that know Therapy we don't really put in many blues-based pentatonic guitar solos. We don't sing about highways and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people that like that kind of classic rock thing can sometimes, we leave them a bit cold, because it's almost like they like their music to sound a certain way. But, we learned a long time ago that we can't start catering to people. So we have a 75-minute set and we just played. And of course, what happens is, maybe somebody that's waiting for me to bust out some shredding goes, well, after 10 minutes, they go, well, obviously this ain't going to happen with this guy. And then I think the energy and the infectiousness we have, forgive that term in the current climate, but it wins people over. Bloodstock was slightly a more broad church in terms of, musical taste. And, I just felt from the moment that we walked on stage that, it was only up to us to mess this up. It wasn't going to be from the crowd, because the crowd was so up for it.
Yeah, so I remember quite a few years ago now when you played Damnation up in Leeds.
Yeah.
And that's obviously a very heavy festival and not really the sort of festival you'd expect Therapy to be at. Mm-hmm. And you talked then about having a specifically heavier set for that festival, so that didn't come into your minds for something like Bloodstock?
No, because I think, I think people have an idea of Therapy is that, people will say you're playing Bloodstock, you're not particularly heavy. But, we do play riffs. Our guitars are tuned down to D, or on some of our other records are down as far as C sharp and C. I think heaviness is about intensity. That Damnation Festival, I think some people think heaviness is a singer that does death metal growls and drums that sound really clicky. You know what I mean? Yeah. Heaviness to me can be, Joy Division can be heavy as anything because it's so intense. But yeah, no, we didn't. That Damnation Festival was an odd one because we enjoyed playing it. We could tell there was a section of the audience that were kind of, this isn't dragged into sunlight. So it's like, they're maybe a bit funny, but so many of those bands love Therapy. We play festivals like that occasionally around Europe.
Yeah.
And some of the darkest and most twisted bands are big fans of Therapy. It's kind of a bit like, we always are. It's a bit like Faith No More and Helmet with us. If you were to describe to someone that likes Gorgoroth, that there's a band that tune in E standard that have got kind of circus keyboards and a singer that sounds like somebody that should be on a cartoon show, they go, this might not be for me. But when it's Faith No More, the whole package, you go, this is amazing. And it's similar with a band like maybe Helmet. You've got a bunch of people that look like Harvard students that wear big baggy shorts with short preppy crew cuts. But it's really, really, really heavy. And I think with Therapy, some people that maybe know us for Scream Major and Nowhere, the songs off Troublegum, maybe think it's a bit in the kind of melodic punk side. But, it is quite intense. And I think, as I said earlier, with Damnation, it was different because I think most of the bands on that bill, Mr. Michael McGeegan that plays bass for us, he's got every single record that those bands do. That's his kind of festival.
Yeah.
And I think whenever we did that, Michael would maybe suggest a few more things because he knows the crowd.
Yeah.
Whereas something like, I don't know, Rambling Man or Steelhouse, we just know we do our thing. And something like Bloodstock, because it is quite an eclectic lineup, we knew we would be all right.
Yeah. So way back when you announced a 30th anniversary tour, that's now a 32nd anniversary tour for next year. So I think we can all say we're actually desperate for that to go ahead now.
Yeah, well, I think at the minute, I've been talking to people, agents, I've been talking to management, and I think by all accounts it will go ahead. We can't see any of the territories cancelling at this point, and that's really, really good news. It does mean that we will get on a tour bus, I think January the 16th to 17th, and we won't be back until the end of May.
Right.
We'll have a week off, and then we will be back out doing all the festivals that were cancelled that we've been rescheduled to play.
Yeah.
And also the new album's going to be recorded in October. So the plan is that because of COVID, we're not going to wait another year. So this album will get released next October. So we'll do the 30th anniversary tour with all the greatest hits on it, cherry pick from our 30 years.
Yeah.
And maybe play a handful of new songs. And then at the end of the summer, we'll maybe take a couple of weeks off, and then we'll go out and tour the new record again. So we've on paper at the minute next year, we've got a festival season and two sort of separate tours.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, but I think you've answered that obviously the anniversary tour is your greatest hits tour. So
yeah.
Is the set list there going to mimic your greatest hits?
Well, it will be. I mean, the on paper, it's different in Europe because some of our songs were more popular in Europe. Things like Bad Mother and the cover version of Joy Division were released as singles in Europe. So whenever we play Belgium or Holland or Germany, they're included in what would be the greatest hits as well. But the UK, I mean, there's, I think, 12 top 40 singles, which we'll play, but that's not very long, so that's probably only 40 minutes. So I think what we will do is we'll probably play about another hour or something like that. And we'll probably pick that from maybe songs that are well known, songs that get the crowd going. And as I mentioned earlier on, what we might do is we might debut a few, like 2 or 3 of the new songs that we've got.
Yeah. So I'll be at the Wolverhampton show at KK's for that, and I cannot wait. So looking back over those now 32 years, you've had some ups and downs, all bands do. With hindsight, would you have done anything differently?
I think, yeah. I mean, a few years ago, I would have said things happen for a reason. I think with hindsight now, because since Neil Cooper joined the band in 2002, that's kind of what therapy is about, really. And since we went back to a 3-piece in 2004, I think the only thing I would do differently now, and this is actually about mental health. It's not about aesthetics or artistic reasons. We had released Troublegum in April of '94, and we had done 2 world tours. And then we went and we quickly rushed Infernal Love, and we went out again and we toured Australia, New Zealand, and Japan with Troublegum. And then we come back, and the record company at this time said, and their very words were, Britpop's happening, no one cares about rock music, so you guys need to get an album out before you become old hat. And and we were kind of we were in the middle of recording. We were all exhausted. That's the only thing I would change. I mean, a lot of people that love the Infernal Love album would say, "Well, we're really glad that happened because we love that record." But I think I would like to get back the sort of year of my life that I lost, being really, really despondent and depressed because of feeling so much under pressure. And I think if I look back now, I would have said, "For God's sake, this album has only been out, 8 months. Let's take Christmas off. Let's all get a bit healthy. Let's go out and tour Troublegum in the places in the world we haven't been, and then take a deep breath and go and write the new album. It'll be better for everyone's health."
Absolutely. So looking forward, hopefully the tour goes ahead next year, and you've got your festival season that you mentioned. After that, what's next for Therapy? You've got a new album coming out. Where do you go next?
Well, the new album's going to be done in October. We've it written, as I say. We're going to go in all of October, and we're going to record it and get that done. We're on Marshall Records, and they have a big, shiny, brand new studio, which they've just built, which is state of the art, and we're going in there to do it with a well-known producer, but we can't name it yet until he just dots the I's and crosses the T's on his contract. And then, and then that'll be, it'll be a lovely, lovely year, actually, because the album will be done and in the bag. And we don't have to worry about doing a new album next year because we'll be touring it anyway. So, we can, on any downtime we get, we can maybe thinking about what we can add to the set, what we can dive into, deep cuts that we haven't played for a while, if we've got any new material. So, I think, unfortunately, although because of COVID, we were away for such a long time, I think next year we've all agreed well, when we all met up to rehearse last week, we said, look, no matter what happens next year, if we turn up to some town in the middle of nowhere in Europe and it's a cold Wednesday night and the hall's half full, who cares? We're on stage. You know what I mean? Or if we get there and the amp breaks down one night, let's not throw a hissy fit. You know, we're very, very lucky to be doing this after 32 years. So let's just enjoy it.
Absolutely. And 30 years is a very long time in this industry. A lot of people don't get anywhere near that. And I don't ever want to envisage such a day, but do you ever think about a point in time where you'll have to call it a day as Therapy?
Yeah, probably. You know, I don't think at the minute, I think the main thing with us, the point number one that me and Michael and Neil have always said is the minute it stops, and we mean this, we can't stress this enough. If I ever walk into a venue and I'm not feeling it, and I don't mean not feeling it as in I'm a bit run down or I've got a cold, if I actually think to myself, and I've heard musician friends of mine say this, oh, for God's sake, I wish I didn't have a gig tonight, then it's time to take a bit of a step back and do something else. And we've always vowed, myself and Michael, that when we split the band up, that's it. We're not going to do what quite a lot of bands do and announce that the band's splitting up to get the big sellout tour and then reform 6 months later. Ta-da, we're back, you know. Yeah. I think when we call it a day, we will call it a day. Yeah, and at the minute, you know, it's part of what's in our blood. I'd like to do it for as long as we can, the three of us. Yeah. We've all got families, you know what I mean? You don't know what's around the corner. Somebody could get ill, God forbid, you know, something could happen. But at the minute, we've always done the same thing, honestly, since 1990. We take it one release at a time. Yeah. And we've never, ever had a 10, 15, 20-year plan. So as long as we're able to do that, if it ever stops, if there's ever no desire for us to do it, then we'll stop. And I mean, only one of us, if I'm feeling it and Michael's not or Neil's not, we'll stop, because there's no point. The three of us have worked so hard to be friends, and with all the things that have happened with this band, with previous members and previous record labels, since 2002, we've been a really tight, great unit that gets on. And if that ever stops, I wouldn't want to do it with anybody else.
Yeah, fair enough. So before we end today, a few years ago, you did some solo work, and there was an acoustic tour as part of that, which was absolutely excellent. Is that something you'll ever revisit in the future?
I mean, I don't know. I think we do it now with the band. The only reason I did that was the two boys in the band had very young families, and they had decided, I mean, Michael and Neil's families both arrived at the same time, and they basically needed to take 6 or 7 months off because they're very, very young babies in the house. And they said, look, we can't leave our wives and go on tour for 6 months. So I just said to our agent at Paul Bolton at X-Ray, I said, look, is there anything that you could get for me, because I think I'm getting on my wife's nerves. You know, I'm kind of just around the house. My son, he's grown up, he's up and running about. So he basically said, well, there has been requests in the past for you to do a solo show. So it started off with 5 or 6, and then it just escalated from there. But I think recently we've done the Wood and Wire show with the band. So I think if it does happen again, it's more than likely to happen with the three of us playing acoustic instruments than it would with me.
And that tour specifically, what I enjoyed personally about that was that it was almost half acoustic, half spoken word, and you'd tell stories between the songs and about therapy and your experiences and things like that. So is that something you'd consider with all three of you as Therapy, going back on the road and almost doing a spoken word mixed with the music?
Yeah, because I think that's the selling point for it. I think, you know, if I went to go and see a musician in these, you know, in a small intimate acoustic venue, if that guy was telling me about, you know, recording one of my favorite tracks of theirs in his pajamas while frying eggs at 9:30 in the morning, that's the kind of stuff I love. You know what I mean? And the stories that I told about, you know, the life on the tour bus, and you know, people being out of their minds because they've drunk too much or done drugs, or people having to defecate in bin bags because the venue toilet shut. This is the kind of stuff that people love to hear. And, you know, it's I think that's what the whole reason to do it. Also things like, you know, it's I really, really like the atmosphere whenever it's acoustic instruments and people are kind of just, you know, they can hear what you're talking about. And, you know, it's quite a lot of those shows I did on my own as well. I remember people like being 2 feet in front of me sitting on a chair. Yeah. And for someone that's been around as long as we have, it's little different things like that which remind you how special it is.
Yeah. Andrew, thank you for that. It's been a pleasure talking to you today.
It's been lovely to talk to you, Tim.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you keep up to date with future episodes by subscribing to our channels. For more information on this podcast, or for all the latest music news, reviews, interviews and more, head over to our website www.therazorsedge.rocks.